first impressions matter. And so key to the UX is also the UI or the visual design of it. Like, does this look like a credible company? Does it have markers that seem like this is a legitimate business and not a scam or some, fraudulent actor in the space? Unfortunately, there's a lot of those. And so through your branding, through your visual design, you can convey a sense of credibility that this is a legitimate business that you'd want to interact with.
Hello, we're Global App Testing, and this is Building Globally, Lessons in Enterprise Product Growth. This is the fastest growing, most exciting podcast in product, and we will be looking at every single angle on how you can grow your enterprise product by talking to professionals in some extremely exciting businesses. Before we get started, a tiny note about this podcast. We spoke to Derek while he was the head of product design at Avant, a Fintech taking a new look at debt financing. Since then, Derek has left to pastures new and started a startup in the world of AI trading, to which we wish Derek the very best of luck. On with the show. Hello and welcome to Building Globally, Lessons in Enterprise Product Growth, the podcast which asks, how do enterprise products grow? And which just occasionally asks, does testing have anything to do with it? I'm Adam Stead, your host, and this podcast is brought to you by Global App Testing, a business which helps enterprise software businesses understand their product experiences around the world. I am joined today by Derek Boman, the Director of Product Design at Avant. So we are going to be talking about product design in fintech. I want to use this to ask a bigger question, which is all about user trust. What is it that makes users trust us as product managers and digital products? What signals do we give away? Derek, first of all, hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Explain a little bit more about what Avant is, what it does, and give a sense of Avant as a business.
Yes, I'm currently Director of Product Design at Avant, and Avant is a credit-first fintech focused on providing credit to individuals that are at a near prime or a lower, like fair credit in the United States, and helping them access credit cards, personal loans to help them move their financial lives forward and connect with their goals that they need to pay or to progress in their financial lives.
Amazing. So just so I understand, what kind of person is the user of Avant? They're like an individual who is in good credit. Is it targeting high net worth individuals or?
It's a consumer in often a very stressed type credit situation. So individuals in the United States between like a 600 and 700 FICO. So kind of an average or fair credit. And they may not have a lot of available options to them. And so we help to get them access to credit. We're facing high inflation right now, a lot of other economic challenges. And so our products help reach those individuals.
And what is important to Avant in terms of its user growth? What kind of are the main dynamics that you see that influence that?
Main dynamics, I would say, are just the broader economic environment, which has been kind of an interesting state for the last 18 months or so. And so growth to us looks like accessing those individuals through, a lot of times through partnerships like with Credit Karma or other affiliate partners that showcase our products and help us through acquisition channels and getting them into our application flow, which then transitions over to where my team takes over and helps the individual go through an application, get verified, prevent fraud, make sure that it is the person who they say they are. And then we just can decision on their credit there and either offer them a product or sometimes move them on to something that might be a better fit for them.
And so your team's role then, so would you say that you safeguard the UX for individual users of Avant?
So I'm the head of UX design, and so my team is responsible for designing the actual user interface of our mobile app, our web experience, our application flow that I mentioned, as well as now our website, and anything that is like customer facing and digital, my team handles. In addition to that, we also do a lot of UX studies through customer research, trying to understand them and their needs and what are their jobs to be done from a financial perspective, and then present that back to the business of here's what we're hearing from customers, here's what we understand in terms of their needs and their kind of evolving financial situations.
Why is good UX important to a product like Avant? How does it actually impact the business having a good user experience versus one that is poor?
Yeah, so I'll abstract that out to just financial services UX in general. So I've been working in fintech for about a decade, and it's been really interesting to focus UX in a financial services space. And I'm very passionate about that particular space. And why I think UX is really interesting in financial services is because of that aspect of trust, of the user has to be able to trust that this institution has their best interest in mind, because you're dealing with their money, which is such an important part of an individual or a small business or an enterprise of any size. Like their money is their lifeblood and impacts every other part of their lives or businesses. And so they need to be able to know that when they interact with that institution is one that offers a good experience, that there's not errors, that you don't accidentally send your money to the wrong place, and more importantly, that your money is going to be protected there, that they're going to trust, they're going to keep safe your hard-earned money, your data, and all of that.
So if the main thing that we're trying to improve is user trust, what would you say impact user trust? Which do you think are the most important? How do you build trust with a user, especially when they might not have heard of your product?
First impressions matter. And so key to the UX is also the UI or the visual design of it. Like, does this look like a credible company? Does it have markers that seem like this is a legitimate business and not a scam or some fraudulent actor in the space? Unfortunately, there's a lot of those. And so through your branding, through your visual design, you can convey a sense of credibility that this is a legitimate business that you'd want to interact with. And there's a lot of really subtle things that you can do just through small copywriting or just the iconography. Like I worked on a product that allowed a user to put in their credentials for a third-party institution and be able to bring in their financials into our product. And simply by putting a little lock icon on there and a little short message of the encryption that was used or the data security that was used, when that was absent, people questioned whether they should be putting their bank credentials into that interface. But we put in a small lock icon and say this uses bank level encryption. Suddenly they feel a lot more comfortable sharing that. So small little user experience elements like that can go a long way to building that trust.
I mean, crucially, the lock has to refer to the bank level encryption as well, right? Because there's the stuff that you can do on the product front end, but you've got to get that back end.
Yeah, it needs to be true, right?
Well. But my sense is that around about maybe 15 years ago, the quality of UX in financial applications here in the UK anyway was very poor. And then there was a sort of series. We had a series of challenger banks. The biggest one here is a bank called Monzo. You're probably aware of them, and they raised the bar in terms of the user experience of financial applications. Is that your sort of sense of how the space has developed in the US as well?
Absolutely, and I think the UK has led out a lot in that kind of challenger bank space, or in fintech in general. Post the financial crisis of 2008, I think there was a lot of trust that was lost with traditional financial institutions, and perhaps deservedly, that some of that trust had been abused, and which left an opportunity for fintech, the rise of fintech companies. Like that term didn't really exist until post financial crisis, when technology companies saw an opportunity to perhaps build on that lack of trust or that lack of innovation in the space, with Monzo in the UK or in the US on the consumer front, folks like Chime or Betterment or tons and tons of others, both in the B2C side, the B2B side, the infrastructure side. Like every part of the financial technology stack has been upturned in the last decade. Now, fintech has had a bit of a pullback in recent years, but I'm still very optimistic about where it can go, because what those companies showed and challenged was that a better user experience was good for the customer, that transparency around their transactions and their data and where their spending was going, offering a much more seamless experience than what was the status quo, resonated with a lot of people, and a lot of people switched over to those.
There's also been like a basic increase in comfort when in using the internet to do your like banking, for example. I mean, it's hard to remember for now, but you know, back in the 90s, there would have been a little bit of a stigma about doing that sort of thing, and now I think people are much more comfortable living there, or accept that they're going to have to live their whole financial lives online and have to deal with the risks and the challenges that come with that.
And that was definitely accelerated during the pandemic as well, when even those that had held out for online banking, mobile banking had been around for quite a long time when by the time 2020 came around, but some folks had resisted it or until they were forced to adopt it because their bank branch was closed or they could not go in person to make a financial transaction, and they were forced to use the mobile app or the online banking system. And that drove a lot of fintech adoption and a lot of growth in that area, particularly during those pandemic years, where a lot of them have not gone back, where they have actually, once they tried it, persisted in a mobile or an online experience.
Do you think that fintech products have UX challenges that are unique to fintech as an industry, or unique to financial services rather as an industry? Is there challenges in UX that you guys have to contend with that are different if you were hiring in, for example, somebody to your role from another industry?
There are certainly unique challenges about it, like I mentioned, because of the sensitivity around money. But the key UX principles of iteration and prototyping and understanding your customer through research and making sure you're solving the right problem, like all of those key parts of product management or good user experience design or product design, those are all definitely at play. Now, financial services, because of the importance that it is in the global economy and the driver that it is to all other industries pretty much, does have unique challenges and has a unique technical challenges where there's a lot of people don't know that most bank infrastructure runs on systems that were designed and coded in like the 1970s. And it's crazy how brittle our economy actually is, built on top of these old legacy systems and layered on and layered on. So some understanding of that nuance and how those things work, and the way that people interact with their money is unique to the space. But it's something that, you know, when I'm like hiring for a UX position, I look for, but someone that has good UX skills, that knows how to engage with the customer and understand their needs, and to prototype and test those ideas with them to make sure they fit the mark. Those are all transferable for sure.
I presume that there's a kind of level of educating users that you have to do, I mean, either in the Avant product or with previous financial products you've worked on. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Definitely. In the United States, there's some basic financial education, which is not given to most individuals. I've always thought of how we can train or prompt or explain things in clear, natural language and not use or avoid using financial jargon that may be confusing to individuals, particularly like in our credit space where they may be lower income or may have a lower education level, where if we can educate on what certain terms mean, then they can make a more educated decision about taking a loan product, for example.
Yeah, I remember the days of like the terms and conditions window where it's like it suddenly pops up and you're like, I'm sure this is apocryphal, but there was somebody said that we agree to more terms and conditions in our lifetime than you could actually read over the course of your lifetime if you did actually go through them.
And in financial education, there's been some behavioral studies that have shown that people don't respond to a lot of it if it's really lengthy. That a lot of financial institutions will have like an education center that tries to teach you about interest rates and loan terms and things like that. And people don't, I think that's a noble to offer that to customers, but a lot of them just don't engage with that content. And so I've tried to make it small and bite size and include it where it's relevant instead of go to this education center and go take this course or go read these articles in this blog or whatever, and then come back and create a product. Why not at the point of creating the product, just explain things and disclose terms in very simple, natural ways at the point of decision where it's most relevant?
I think that, and I guess it's one of those things where content meshes with product. People want the relevant information at the point that they need it expressed clearly and simply. And that's actually a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah, in financial services, there's certain terms that you have to disclose, at least by regulation in the US, like the certain things have to be said a certain way and disclosed a certain way, which creates this requirement that is counter to what I just described of sometimes of making it really easy. Like the intent of those were to put it in consistent terms so they could compare between products or company A to company B, that they're saying things in the same way. But sometimes those terms like devolve into a very legal or jargony type language. And so those need to be disclosed. But how might we with UX provide an interpretation maybe of, hey, here's the official terms, here's what we have to tell you by regulation, here's what all that means. Or let me explain, just hit the key points of what is in this lengthy terms document of what you're agreeing to here.
Could you give us sort of an example of how you manage that?
Well, I try to make it as collaborative as possible with any compliance or legal requirements, because at the end of the day, like those are requirements that we have to meet and that they've been put in place for particular reasons. And so I try not to see it as adversarial to the customer or the user, that it's the disclosures are there for, hopefully for transparency purposes and for their benefit. Now, I try to be as collaborative as possible in understanding where exactly is the requirement versus the interpretation of the requirement, because sometimes it's like a culture builds around a certain requirement of, well, this is how this is done. And I try to go back to, well, what does it actually say, or what do we actually need to do, and how might we get creative with how we do that? Now, not creative to try and bend the rules or anything like that, but to create a mutually beneficial outcome.
Do you have like a legal team who's part of the product, or is it like back and forth between the legal part of the company and the product part of the company? How does that how do you manage the inputs there?
So we have an internal team that is, very well versed on what the requirements are, and they work kind of hand in hand with our teams as we're developing our any kind of front-facing, user-facing experiences. And certainly before we, push that live or code it out or deliver it to the market, there's many eyes that goes by and checked against all of those different requirements. So it's very much a collaborative process between design, UX, engineering, legal, compliance, like operations, like all of those pieces need to come together in order to build like a cohesive experience. Like we always talk about how CX is really everyone's job in the company, that it's not exclusive to just one team that is responsible for the customer experience.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you go about trying to understand your users better?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a variety of ways that can be done. And the simplest one, which sometimes people dismiss as too simple, is by simply talking to them. The more intimate the conversation, even if it's at a small sample size, like are incredibly valuable at what you learn, because you see the context around how they manage their money. It's not just like, it doesn't begin or end when they enter your product, that there's a whole life that your product exists within. And so understanding that customer journey of where are they at this point in time, what is their job to be done that exists regardless of your product. Your product is maybe just the current way that they've hired, or the current solution that they've hired to fulfill that job for them. But they could just as easily fire that and solve it with some other solution, right? People have needed to manage money before credit cards existed, before mobile apps existed, before any of those types of things. That's just the current way that job is done.
What do you think that businesses get wrong about UX research? If there was if you were in a room with a bunch of people who are similar to yourself, what would you say that they're most likely? Where's the blind spots? What is it that people are likely to underinvest in or overinvest in? What's maybe an attitude in the industry that you disagree with?
Yeah, I think companies over time, and especially as they get bigger, they start to drift apart from their customers, that they become stuck within their own walls and they don't go out and even talk to the people that they're serving. They view people as spreadsheets and numbers of like, random figures, that instead of as individuals or as businesses that they're looking to serve. And so yeah, I try to bring that external in and share it with individuals. Here's what we're learning. Here's videos of their faces and their emotional expressions when they interact with this. Like, this is actually really, really frustrating. And it might be, solving some business need that on a spreadsheet looks like it's doing a really good job. But under the hood, if you talk to someone or if you look at reviews or something, could be incredibly frustrating. And so how might we also look for mutual beneficial outcomes there as well?
So do you that's interesting. So further to just talking to the customers is actually when you're internally communicating about the customers, it's useful to show their faces, which is to say to kind of humanize them, to try and animate them and convey that they're real in a slightly deeper way.
Absolutely. So in jobs to be done, we talk about 3 different types of jobs. That a job that a customer has, they have functional jobs, which is like do this thing, but they also have social and emotional jobs that they're trying to fulfill. And like when we've surveyed consumers at both fintech companies that I've worked at and tried to learn like what is the main thing that they want from their financial institution, it's not, deposit this check or move this money. It's, I want a sense of control over my financial life, or I want a peace of mind that my money is taken care of. It's more of like an emotional connection that people have, and that's what they're looking for. Of, I don't want to worry, or I want to feel like I have control, or that I'm moving forward in my life. The main job that people express, which is the most common that we've talked to in interviews and in surveys, is this more emotional connection with their money. And I think a lot of businesses don't understand that they think that it is very transactional, which it is transactional, but trust, security, those are all very emotional things as well.
I guess it's a funny thing because with financial services in particular, you have both of the kind of extreme ends there, which is at the one time you might be like, I am trying to trade a derivative or do something that is highly technical and specific and actually has huge implications for the way that the product works. And at the same time, obviously money comes into is a very emotional thing, and impacts us very deeply, and those kind of broad brushstroke feeling things are huge as well. Like, do you kind of think about the jobs to be done framework from both sides of it? Is there like do you emphasize one over the other? How do you kind of integrate those two?
Well, for an individual, all is integrated, right? They think of it just holistically. Those things are, you can't be separated. They're completely intertwined. And to what you were your example about trading derivatives, I'm actually in the process of founding my own venture where I'm co-founding an AI startup. And so I'm going to be leaving my current role to found a new company in the fintech space, which is focused more on the investment banking side. Like what you just mentioned, but we're helping individual financial analysts automate a lot of the tedium in their workflow and help them create financial models and pitch decks with the help of AI. And as we've talked to individuals and done some customer discovery there, you would think that would be a very kind of functional transactional thing, but you also see a lot of emotional and social jobs to be done, even in that aspect too, where it's like, help me look good to my boss. That when I put, these investment bankers, they spend hundreds of hours putting these things together. They pass it up to their managing director, and it just gets ripped to shreds. Like, no, you made this mistake and you made that mistake, and do it again, do another revision, and it gets passed down. So we're thinking about that. Like, how can we technically build a model for them, but how do we help them find and identify errors and surface things that help them look good in their job? That, like, wow, you put a lot of thought into this, or you really like nailed all the technical aspects here. And can we do that assisted by technology through the use of AI? Like, also really interesting there. So even in somewhere like investment banking, where you would think it's very kind of transactional focused, there's tons of emotion and human aspect there too.
So obviously we talked about user trust, and I mean, maybe you don't agree with this. I'm curious to hear your appraisal. We're entering a world in which trust is at a greater premium, where AI has a huge implication for trust. It has implications because potentially we could automate things like with your startup, and we're going to have to trust that the AIs do a good job there, or put in controls to prevent it from doing it. And it also has implications for trust because of the enormous fraud implications for generative AI and this, whole suite of tools that are unfortunately going to probably empower fraudsters. Do you agree with the assessment, first of all, that we're going to enter a more kind of difficult trust environment in fintech?
Absolutely. There's a report that comes out every year that I always take a look at, which is by this group Edelman, and they do this Edelman Trust Barometer report every single year of like this global survey that they do of trust in a bunch of different areas. And financials, I look at it every single year to see where financial services ranks, because people tend to think of financial services as like a very trusted industry. But if you look at that report every single year globally, it's like the least trusted industry other than social media. It's trusted, but just so. It's like social media is like, let's see, I've got it right here. It's like 49% of people trust social media to manage their best interests, and financial services is 61. So it's in the trusted area, 60 and above, but just barely. And it's below, technology companies, education, healthcare. So like trust in financial services is really, really important. And you bring up this AI, and the other thing that they talked about this year in that report is like, where does AI sit? And you're right, it's like in this sweet spot where it could go either way, or it's at this inflection point rather that it could go either way, where like it's at this crossroads where it's about half and half of people that like think I reject this innovation, that this is not good for humanity, or it's so 35% say I reject this innovation, 30% say I embrace this innovation, and everyone else probably is somewhere in the middle. So it's like it needs to prove itself. It needs to prove that it can be for the good of humanity, and can, I like to think I'm a techno optimist, that this can be for productivity, massive productivity gains, and help grow the global economy. But like, that's going to require investment in the safety of it, in the usage of it, that it is put to good use. And I think that's incumbent on the individuals working in that space to have that mindset of this can be an incredibly powerful tool. And just like any tool, it can be used in a variety of ways. And we should put in place the safeguards, or at least the frameworks to help us use it in ways that are productive for society, and not the other way around.
So with all that said then, so at the end of in 2024, we're in a kind of situation where there's AI's coming into software in a big way. It's probably going to be involved in fintech, but it's also going to be the subject of different fraud cases. We've had this kind of revolution in user design in financial technology, certainly consumer applications. If somebody was saying, was a product manager, say, for a fintech application, looking forward for the next sort of 5-10 years, what would be the actions that you would recommend they do, or could start doing right now, in order to increase user trust in their application, on a sort of 5-year plan?
So part of the reason why people don't trust it is because, at least right now, they tend to sometimes hallucinate or give bias or or just incorrect information. And I heard Jacob Nielsen is a UX kind of pioneer. I saw a quote from him the other day where he might have been quoting another individual, but he said that like AI is the worst that it will be in the next 5 years. So it's only going to get better, and they're going to solve a lot of the problems that maybe when people don't trust the factuality or the generative content that is given. Like that'll continue to get better. There are solutions that the people can put in place to mitigate like the outdated training data that is in the thing by injecting your own or accessing your own data stores into the prompts as well to have the most up-to-date information. As we've been building out our startup, we've also leveraged some research out of Stanford University that helps with that as well, where these LLMs tend to kind of go to the middle or give kind of an average answer. And that's their job, is to just predict the next word with probabilities. And so how do you make sure that they're not just giving an answer that sounds good or that just kind of falls to the middle, but is actually factually accurate, which is important in financial applications or applications where the factuality is really, really important.
Hi, Adam here. I hope you're enjoying the show so far. Just to say that if you want to drive product growth, one way you can do so is with testing. If you're curious about what that could mean, head over to our website and look for something called test-driven growth. But for now, back to the show. Fantastic. Just before we wrap up, if you were talking to yourself from 5 years ago and you'd just come into the job, what is it that you maybe wasted time trying to figure out or that took you a while to kind of get your head around that you know now and makes a difference in terms of the output you're able to achieve?
Well, I think this has been ingrained with me from the beginning of my career, but I would say it's been reinforced again and again, certainly in the last 5 years, of the importance, going back to that idea, the importance of talking to actual customers and understanding their needs when you're building products for them. Like these are human products, whether they're powered by AI or software or whatever. Like at the end of the day, these serve humans and their businesses or their families, and money is very, very important to them. And so the more that I've engaged with individuals and talked to them about that and understood their goals and what they're trying to achieve with it, technology is a tool to that, but at the end of the day, we can't forget for who we're serving and that we're helping people make sense of the money that they have and the goals that they want to achieve.
And then final question then. So at the end of every episode, we ask our guest which person in product they would most like to take to lunch. And if you could just explain what lunch you'd like to take them to, perhaps it would be to a sushi bar, perhaps it would be to a burger restaurant.
Oh, geez. So I'm a big fan of Jobs to Be Done, as I've mentioned on the show so far. And so I would say, the late Clayton Christensen has been an inspiration for me, who helped develop that theory. Unfortunately, passed away a number of years ago, but he was an individual that I found very inspiring in a lot of different ways. And and he partnered with another individual named Bob Mesta. And I follow him a lot too on Jobs to Be Done. And one of the things that they did when they were developing that theory between the two of them is they went to a fast food restaurant and had a milkshake and talked to people about what is the job to be done of the milkshake. And so I guess maybe to answer that question, I'd love to take those two out for a milkshake and just discuss their theories and their ideas.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Derek Boman. It was amazing to talk to you, and we'll catch up again very soon.
All right. Thank you.